Here is an overall view of my garden, as you can see from one side to the other here. And I'm just going to do you a quick run through of where things are at and how things are doing this year. So this is the blueberry patch, and there is sweet peas down at the end. And I'm hoping this is videoed just fine because I can't actually see the screen. Here are some cauliflower and cabbage, I believe, that didn't make it into my shade or my covered area to keep the bugs off, but they're not doing too bad. And these are sugar pumpkins that are growing profusely in the background. And along the front here are black beans, drying beans for the winter. So there's the blueberries, and there is grapes back in here as well. We actually built this trellis along the back for the grapes, but the squash has sort of taken over from it. The grapevines, actually, you can possibly see some grapes down in through there. So this is my garlic that I planted last fall. It's got garlic scapes and that on it, and we've been eating them, but it should be ready to be harvested at the end of the month. Here's the blueberry patch that I'm mainly picking off right at this point in time, and the blueberries are wonderful on it. I think you can hear the wind in the trees behind me. As I'll point it up at the trees, you can see them waving back and forth in the wind. I'm not sure what this plant is here, but I didn't know if it was a weed or a flower, so I thought I'd just leave it and we'll see what happens. If you know what it is, let me know. The dill didn't do very well this year. It got eaten by something, and so right now it's going to seed. And these are a couple of squash that have come up voluntarily, have no idea what they are. And you'll see sunflowers throughout my garden because they're in my compost, and there's compost all over the garden. In here we have some lettuces that I've replanted, some more squash. One is a marrow, I know. The other ones I think are a type of acorn. And actually I believe these ones are the spaghetti squash. These are some pole beans here, and the second set of snap peas that I planted. So they're just coming on. Over here is some lettuce and lavender, the carrots and the beets, both red and yellow beets. They've done exceptionally well. And the parsnips, we have one parsnip that came up this year. Well, two. Looks like there's another little tiny one over there. And then these down here are rutabagas that I've just replanted. And so the ones in the center here got sort of messed up by a raccoon, so I'm not sure if they're coming back or not. We're just waiting to see. Here's my strawberry bed, which the same thing, the raccoon got into it this year. So I didn't get off as many strawberries as I would like. But we eventually put nails down here with the netting so he couldn't get in. There's another look at the spaghetti squash, and there's the Kelsey onions that were actually put in quite late this year. They weren't put in until the end of May. Over here we have Spanish onions, which were put in quite a bit earlier, but as you can see, they're quite a bit smaller. This is my shelling peas. Oh, I love them. They are so good. You just pop them open and eat them. I don't think they ever make it to the house. And besides them, we have some, they're a brown bean, they're drying bean, and to use for the winter. And next year, I wouldn't plant two clingy plants next to each other because they're both trying to grow up each other. In here we have the patty pans. I'm not sure if you can see them or not. And they're just a little squash. They're summer squash, and I use them like a zucchini. and they have sort of a smell to them, sort of a sweet smell. They're actually quite nice. In here we have another summer squash, a yellow squash, and this is a marrow in here that's growing. I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, and my corn is looking a little sad this year. Over here is what I wrote about previously, about putting a netting over top of my Brussels sprouts, and you can see some broccoli there, some cauliflower, and some cabbage. And behind this is my scarlet runner beans that are growing up the vine here. And the hummingbirds are loving them. I see them here every afternoon. Over here is some Swiss chard and some a cauliflower. And this is a hugelkultur bed that Rob built me this year, so it's brand new. And it's not doing as well as my other beds, but next year it'll be wonderful. Over here, I planted a couple of different things. These are chickpeas, and they're black chickpeas. I thought I'd give them a try. And right here is some, they're the edible soya beans. So they're supposed to grow quite high, and I didn't get the height out of them, so I'm not sure how they will grow this year. Oh, but look at, here's little chickpeas already growing. Here's my broccoli. I've already harvested most of it, but little shoots are still coming up, and so I'm leaving it here, but I've taken the covering off of it. This is some squash. You can tell we like squash. This is squash that I had to put a fence around last night because, quite frankly, we couldn't walk in the pathway here. It was getting out of control. And here is some kale, and there's a Swiss chard over here as well. Anything that's going to flower, like these radishes, I'm leaving, and I collect the seeds from them for next year. This is a couple of zucchini. Here is, I picked them all last night, so I don't think I'm finding anything there, but that's a zucchini. And this is a summer zucchini with the yellow. And the rest of this bed is acorn squash. And as you can see, I'm not going to have a pathway through here very soon. Straight ahead is the potatoes that we've been eating. They're wonderful. This first little section here is red potatoes, and then the rest is Yukon Gold. These are the snap peas, the first ones I planted, and they're still going. But they're coming to the end of their life here. As you can see, some of them have already all dried out. Here's the rhubarb. It's the first batch, actually the third batch of my rhubarb this year. And it just seems to never quit. And horseradish, which is getting out of control here. And this is all my herbs. So that's oregano, and there's thyme, and sage, and parsley going to seed there, which I will keep for seed for next year. There's the compost, and actually I still have compost, and as you can see, there's potatoes still growing up in last year's compost, and this is this year's compost. And these beds, compost beds, have been wonderful. I'll put a link to how to make them below the video. This is one of this year's new beds. It's a hugelkultur as well. And these are radishes at the end, kohlrabi, yellow beets, pak choi, which has gone to seed, and regular beets. And then these are some more of the brown beans that I'm growing for drying, for soups and stews and things like that. Here's some Swiss chard going to seed, which I'll keep. That's last year's actually Swiss chard, along with some squash. As you can see, 3 different types of squashes, and some tomatoes at the back. So here's the greenhouse. These have been working really well. The uprights and the supports that we've put in have been wonderful. We've got some little baby cherry tomatoes down there. These are peppers. These are all cucumbers in through here. You can see we have a lovely cucumber growing. We've been eating them the last little while. And there's more cucumber plants. These are all different types of tomatoes, which I have the names of. This is actually a beefsteak, which is not very beefy at this point in time. More cucumbers, peppers, and here is a very unusual pepper that I've never had before. As you can see, it's growing upright instead of down, and it's called a red Belgian pepper, and it's supposed to be a tasty sweet flavor, but it can also be yellow, and that appears to be what we have here. Here's some basil and more tomatoes coming up here, and as well we have cantaloupe along here, so that's growing up, and you can see the squash is trying to come through. And we have a really neat looking tomato here. It's called a bull's heart, and as you can see, it's very large and sort of a unique shape. So that's the one tomato that's furthest along in the greenhouse here. So here's the greenhouse, or here's the house and garden from the greenhouse perspective. And that's how my garden is growing this year. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will give you another update soon and put some of these links below the video to the different seeds and the different processes I use to do the garden this year. Actually, the garden this year I think is so prolific because we had chicken manure put in. So most of this is, actually I'll show you over here, you can see it better, is chicken manure. Oh, this is to keep out the raccoons, because the raccoons were digging in here. And these are sweet potatoes. But what we did is this year we put in under the dirt, and on top we put in chicken manure and leaves in the fall, and we shredded the leaves and put the chicken manure on top, and then all winter long I just let it go into the soil and left this as a top. And so when I planted this year, all I did was pull the mulch aside and plant the plants, and then pull the mulch back up to it, and it seemed to work, and it was dead easy to plant the garden this year. So hope you've enjoyed the tour, and we'll get the flower garden next time.